right, we'll call this meeting to order, starting with our clerk determining if there's a quorum.
Mr. Chairman, we have 7 present and 0 absent, so we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you everyone who came out on this steamy August evening. The cool summer has dissipated, I guess, in full force. So thank you for coming out. First item on the agenda here is to approve the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any comments on this? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, recognitions and awards. Todd, I'll turn that over to you if you want to say a little something. Or
You bet, and I think I'm actually going to pass the baton off to Garrett and
Okay, Garrett.
have him talk about this nice award, which we seem to be winning on an annual basis. So.
Chairman of the board and members of the board, thank you first of all for allowing us to recognize Ann Knapp. This year Ann Knapp is a special ed driver who's been driving for us for over 20 years, 22 years. And she is the 2013 recipient of the MSBOA Transportation Specialist Award. And there are only 6 given out every year in the whole state. So Ann won this past year and she was recognized at Sugar Lake Lodge outside of Grand Rapids. And we had a great event there, so to pay Ann back or a portion of it for all the hard work that she's done over the years. She's had a lot of difficult long routes that leave early, go down a lot of country roads and get back late, and she's just performed extremely well over the years, and we're very proud to have her and proud to have her recognized. And beyond that, it's a great thing as well, because there is a $1,000 scholarship that we're able to give away next year at the awards ceremony with the high school that will be in Ann's name. So very well deserved, and thank you all for the time, and congratulations to Ann.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Garrett, and thank you, Ann. As a father who's for the first time about to put his daughter on a bus to go to school, starting next week, I know how much trust it takes to do that, and how much we appreciate the outstanding drivers that we have here in Faribault to take our kids to and from school every day. So thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I add something?
Please do.
I worked at Whipple Heights, which was a day treatment in the early 90s. And I remember Ann picking up kids and driving, and so that is a lot of hard work over many years driving our special ed kids. So I'm just thrilled to see her and congratulate her tonight.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Ann. Next up is community comment time. This is the time for any members of the community to address the board with any concerns or comments that they might have. There is a 3-minute limit per speaker and a 15-minute limit per topic. Okay, well, hearing none, we will move on with the meeting then. Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. Are there any items that any board members would like to have a request for separate action? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
I vote aye. Tom Casper,
Aye.
Deb Davis,
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud, and President Ingrid.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, it passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. There is no report from the curriculum committee this month. The next meeting of the curriculum committee will be September 9th. Next on the agenda, policy. We have a policy committee report. Who's going to bring that report to us this evening? Yvette?
Well, I would just say
Like
that
you were appointed to, so.
the policies that we are looking at tonight had very minimal changes from the previous policies, and I supported all of the work that they did to make those minimal changes and would agree that we should approve them.
Okay. So, let me see here. So if I'm looking at my agenda right, there are no policies for second reading.
No, I'm sorry, I was talking about the first reading.
That's correct, yep. No, I just want to make sure I understand. So we have a number of policies here for first reading. As board members know, these are policies before they can be changed must come to us twice. And so first they come to us for our first reading so that we can look at them and have any time for questions that we might want. And then they'll come back to us next month for a second reading. The policies that we are currently looking at for the viewing public, I'll read them out. That is policy 532, the use of peace officers and crisis teams to remove students with IEPs from school grounds. Policy 533 is the wellness policy, and policy 806 is the crisis management policy. Are there any questions on those policies at this time?
Nope, just a comment, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Just to thank Kathy for organizing this. We come to the meetings and Kathy Matichak has these all nicely organized, and we're able to check to see what has changed from one policy to the next, and it makes our meetings go pretty smoothly. So thanks, Kathy, for organizing those. We're actually getting caught up with our policies too and updating, so it's been a relief to have her do it.
Any other comments or questions on these policies? As I said, these policies will come back to us next month for a second reading, and we'll take action on them at that time. For this evening, we also have an item to consider for rescission. That is policy 1004.2, community services. Would you like to say anything about this policy?
Well, it's just an outdated policy that we have pretty much all of our other policies covering what this has to say. So it's the last time I think it was approved. It actually doesn't have a date of adoption, so, but it's in our policy manual. It's another one of those outdated policies that we have to.
Is it older than me is the question. So far we've been close, but not. Okay, any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the rescission of policy 1004.2, community services?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to rescind policy 1004.2. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is finance. Do we have a finance committee report?
We went over quite a few things, which will all be coming up. Some cooperative agreements that Mr. Hubert talked about, the transportation contract that Garrett was there to go over with us, some updates on an agreement for sign language captioning or for the board meetings, since we have these nice people coming and signing for us. There's something coming up later that we didn't talk about, Riverbend. And then there was the police liaison that we didn't have quite all the information, but they did bring forward, so they must have gotten our questions answered. There were some language things that we were wondering about. And our next meeting is September 16th.
Okay. Any questions about the report? Hearing none, let's move on to item 8B. Items reviewed by the Finance Committee and recommended for board approval. And that starts with number 1, LNS captioning agreement to provide captioning services. Mr. Superintendent, would you like to tell us about this?
I can explain it to you. We had some requests to have our board meetings interpreted live, and we're working on that right now. We have, as Deb was talking about, these wonderful ladies who've been helping us out with the interpreting of our board meetings. And what we have now done is we've asked to contract with LNS captioning to have the board meetings closed captioned on our TV live with this program. So it's going to be a nice option for our community, and it's very similar to what the city is using, I think, too. So Kathy has done most of the research.
Any comments or questions on this item? Right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll let Kathy sort that out. We have a motion and a second to approve the LNS captioning agreement to provide captioning services. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all. Next up is our pupil transportation contract with Faribault Transportation. Superintendent, would you like to?
Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. The Finance Committee reviewed this, and they're recommending approval of the contract. Colleen probably has more details. She works directly with the transportation if you have questions for her about finances. So, otherwise, we recommend approval.
Any
I will make one comment about this too, is that the transportation people were working diligently to help us keep costs down, and came up with a contract where they're pretty positive, and so is the finance committee, to make it work where we actually have one less bus. But they've redone their routes and everything, and very nice of them to work with us to keep our costs down.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the pupil transportation contract with Faribault Transportation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is our Minnesota State Academy's mainstream contract. Mr. Superintendent, would you like to say a few words?
And again, you can talk to Colleen about this. I believe that this originated, I was at the Kenosha meeting, so I missed this one too. This has originated, this has been around for a while, and this is one of those errors that Colleen and the Finance Committee caught, where we're actually getting charged for our students going to the academies, and we're actually paying a pretty good chunk of money out of our general fund for this, when in fact that we do have a contract with them that says they don't charge tuition for our students that go to attend the academies. So our recommendation is to approve this contract to continue that relationship with the academies and not have our kids charged a tuition to attend.
Any questions or comments on this item?
It's a two-way deal, isn't it, that we don't pay,
You want, yeah, it's,
we don't pay and they don't pay?
that's correct.
Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Minnesota State Academy's mainstream contract. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up is the Nurstrand Purchase of Services Agreement. Mr. Superintendent, would you like to say a few words?
It's, this time if you have any questions, you'll refer to Cheryl Hall on this one too, but we contract services that offset some of our costs actually for our nursing services. I don't know if we increased this year for these services, we've used the same staff. So it's a charge for us to utilize our service for Nurstrand when they request our services.
All right, any comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Nurstrand Purchase of Services Agreement. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 5, reinstate special education paraprofessional hours for 2013-2014. Mr. Superintendent.
We ended up with some more MA billing money than what we anticipated, in the amount of $25,000. And we can utilize this, which is appropriate, to go into our special education costs by increasing the time. It's not a lot of time, but the number of pairs that we have, when you multiply them, it ends up being about $25,000 for that. Again, Cheryl came with this recommendation, and if you have any questions for her, we'd encourage you to ask.
So,
Go ahead.
if I'm understanding what Mr. Sesker is saying, this is funded through some extra medical assistance money that the district is receiving, and it's not a new expense against the general fund.
Correct.
Am I correct?
Correct, completely.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Yvette wins. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, good job, Tom. We have a motion and a second to approve the special education, to reinstate special education paraprofessional hours for 2013-2014. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next up are cooperative sponsorship agreements with Bethlehem Academy, STEM, Discovery, and Shattuck St. Mary's. Mr. Superintendent, is there anything new about these? We've had these for a long time.
No, you can see what the actual costs are and the multipliers. I think that the board, help me out, Deb, when was that multiplier increased? Was it 24% at one time?
It was 20% at one time, 24% then, and then, 25% a couple of years ago.
Yep. And Ken figures out all of these costs and makes these calculations for us.
Any further questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the cooperative sponsorship agreements with Bethlehem Academy, the STEM School, Discovery, and Shattuck St. Mary's. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Last on this list is item 8B7, the City of Faribault Youth Liaisons. Mr. Superintendent.
Yeah, all the language items have been ironed out, so we're good to go with the language. The Finance Committee approved the increase of the officers. I believe it's a 2.5% increase in their fees, and the Finance Committee is recommending approval from the board at this time.
Any questions or comments? Yep.
Did we have in there a choice that was brought up in the finance committee? Choose, did we
Yeah,
have the right?
we get that in there. Yep, that was contract language I was missing. Yep.
To give us some choice in who it is that will be
Who
the
it is,
liaison?
yeah.
Yeah, it's, I can tell you real quick.
We've always had that, and then when they presented this originally, they had sort of taken it out.
It wasn't in the language.
Yep, and then we,
Yep, it's that last sentence under youth liaison, letter A, number 1. That last sentence in there, we kept.
Well,
We
thank you
put-
to the Finance Committee for catching that. I think that's important.
We had an excellent report from Mr. Turtle on the importance of this liaison officer and how well they work together with the students in the schools. And we were impressed with the importance of having this liaison officer in our schools.
Any other questions or comments? And hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the City of Faribault Youth Liaison Contract. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you all. We are moving along quickly. We have no insurance committee report this evening. We have wellness committee minutes for you to look at. I don't know if there's any questions on those minutes. I'll give it a second in case there any question on the wellness committee minutes.
I'll just highlight that they are planning another health fair at the middle school, probably for January, February. We're ironing out the details, but it was very successful at the high school, so they're gonna try it at the middle school. Hopefully we'll invite some more community partners to be involved, like businesses, so we get the word out.
Thank you. All right, so next up is our community ed report. Anne Marie.
Hi, and if I can just piggyback a little bit on what Yvette said, to just point out two other things about wellness. Not only the fair is great, but Yvette, do you want to talk about the whole wheat pizza?
It was delicious. I will say that was very delicious.
Yes, we got to sample the pizza and it is really delicious. So hopefully there won't be too many complaints about the pizza. It's delicious. So just wanted to point that out. In terms of community ed, it's been really busy getting some grant proposals in. One we've worked on with early learning, with early childhood, something to do with parent aware. It's a whole rating that early learning centers have gone under in the last couple of years, and McKinley is a 4-star rated program. That's the highest rating you can receive. And along with all of the different funding that came from the state legislature this year, there's 2 different pots of money. One goes directly as scholarships to parents and families to put their students at a 4-star rated early learning center. So hopefully we'll get some parents in connection with those funds and they can come to McKinley and be served. The other piece of that was actual expansion, program expansion, which is terrific because we have waiting lists at McKinley. We have, I believe, 13 3-year-olds and 17 4-year-olds. So really getting, we wrote a great proposal in conjunction kind of with Head Start. There's $116,000 that the state legislature designated for for Faribault District. So we're kind of sharing that with Head Start. We're the only 2 programs in town that are 4-star rated. So we went to expand programming at McKinley, so adding 1 more class to serve those on the waiting list, and then also to expand kindergarten camp, 3 sections instead of just 1 for the summer. So really wanting to not only bolster our programming through the year, but we want to make sure that there's that seamless transition for kids that aren't getting that preschool experience in kindergarten camp, because that would be part of the eligibility. So that is a grant that was just submitted as of last Friday. The other proposals that have been worked on are generated from our partners within workforce development around adult basic education. I've talked about it a little bit, but we did submit a proposal that covers both expansion in the healthcare field and the manufacturing field for our adult basic education and adult ESL students in town. So hopefully that grant will be approved, and I'll let you know if we have good news or bad the next time around, because I believe we'll know within the month whether both the early learning and the adult basic ed proposals are approved. And other than that, and I don't know if there are questions about that, but other than that, September 10th is the next Community Education Advisory Council meeting. Jerry and Tom, hope to see you both there. Thanks. Yep.
I have a question. There's been reports in the news that due to what's called the sequestration on the
Yes.
federal level,
Yep.
that there may be as many as 1,000 students who are not going to receive Head Start services, I
Okay.
believe in Minnesota. I
Mhm.
think that's accurate information.
Sure.
Is that affecting us here in Faribault in any way that you can identify?
You know, Colleen, do you know, yeah, I haven't heard, the state is usually pretty good about sending us information around sequestration, and the only sequestration that I know will affect community education is adult basic education. We will receive a decrease in federal funding because of sequestration. And actually our Department of Human Services Office of Refugee grant last time around was cut short due to sequestration. But we are going forward again with another refugee grant for this coming year for both the high school and middle school students. So that was another, I should have reported on that, but I don't know about early childhood.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was fantastic
Yep.
news about our 4-star rating.
Yes.
That's all wonderful, and I
Yes.
guess my concern was that if we were being negatively impacted by quote-unquote sequestration, I can't even say it.
Sequestration,
Yeah,
I know,
thank you.
it took me a lot, I did cards to do, pronunciation of that, so. Okay. Is that it? Thanks.
It might be just, I thought it might be good at a work session to explain the different early childhood programs that we have and what we
Yes.
don't have and what is run by us and what's not run by us.
Yep.
It might be a nice report at the next work session to talk about Head Start, early childhood, preschool, birth to 3, 4-year-old program in kindergarten.
Sounds good, and we
Separate
share
groups.
that building with special education too, so Cheryl and I
ECSE.
can, yep, ECSE, so Cheryl and I can come up with something.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay. Next on our agenda, other matters, item 10. Number 1 is to approve rescheduling of the October work session from Monday, October 14th to Monday, October 14th at 5:30 p.m. I don't know off the top of my head when that was scheduled for. When was that?
Here, it's-
It was the 7th originally?
Yes.
And what was the reason for the change? I don't remember.
There's my fall conference I may be going to on that Monday, the superintendent's conference.
Is the 14th Columbus Day?
Oh, you running that?
It is Columbus Day, yep.
Does that affect us?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can't have a
We
meeting.
can have it.
So I would say the board's probably not going to approve that.
That's right. Probably a good idea.
It's technically, I think, breaking the law, so.
You know, why don't we leave it the 7th for right now, because there's another conference I might be going to, the 2nd through the 5th. So I think we'll be okay if we leave it at the 7th now. So there's no one. Yep.
No.
And then I probably won't go to the fall conference this year, for the superintendent's conference.
The
You want to
21st
go
would
what?
be an option for Monday, the 21st. Our meeting, our business meeting is on the 28th, so.
Yes.
I guess that leaves the 21st as a possibility. I don't know if we want to do that at this moment, or if we prefer to wait and see. What are your thoughts, Todd, on that?
Well, just so you know, the November work session is scheduled for the 4th. So that would be 3 Mondays in a row of board meetings, which doesn't give us a lot of time between those times for those. If it's okay, I would suggest just keeping it at the 7th, October 7th, and I'll just work my schedule around it. I think I forgot about Columbus Day on the 14th, so I think we can work with that.
All right, any other comments or questions on that? So given that, I'm not gonna ask for a motion to do so. All right, so next up on the agenda, item 10B, the Riverbend Nature Center. The board approved the addition of putting Riverbend back in the budget for this year. And we just received a contract very recently here within the last few weeks from Riverbend. And there were some dramatic changes to what that contract would look like. And so Todd thought it was important to bring to the board to see that before the board makes any decisions on that. So I'll mention what those changes are. We have been paying for this past year $19,500. The estimated cost for the new year was to be $37,333. So almost doubling the cost in 1 year. On top of that, the number of hours would be reduced from 30 hours to 26 and a half. So there would be some reduction in the services as well. There's a changing curriculum. I don't know if we have any answers on whether or not that's perceived as a big deal or not yet. We're looking into that. But the curriculum that's being offered is being changed, and it's not clear at this time whether or not that will make it difficult for our staff to adjust themselves to that new curriculum. So that's being looked into at the moment. So that's what's come to us, and before any I think before the district would want to go forward on this, they would want the administration would like to hear strong support for doing this from the board, if that's the decision of the board, or if the board has concerns about this, how the board would like to proceed. So with that, I'll open it up to thoughts on this at this point.
Can you clarify, so is the new price based on student attendance? Is that, so did they take an average number of students that participated in the past and just multiplied it by their hourly rate or something?
Yeah, that's true,
where they
but that's
came
not, I
this
think
number?
the increase is because they've decided not to give a discount to the district anymore. So it's based upon a specific number, which is why it's not an exact number, so that has changed, but the increase is because in the past, the district, because it was doing a contract, received a discount over what a single group who wanted to come in, that rate would be for a single group. We are now being told that they no longer want to give discounts, and so they're charging us the full rate for all of them, even though we're doing a contract. So that's my understanding, correct me, of why there's such a big increase. The per pupil, I think, is just a changing of the exact way they want to do it, but not the reason for the increase.
And just, I'll want to put one more comment in there before you start the discussion, just to make you aware of all the dynamics that have occurred. We really did not let Riverbend know that we would be willing to open this up until July. Remember the timeline of the cuts was July. And they have been without a director. They have an interim director, I believe, right now, but they've gone through some changes too over the last couple of months. And so we really didn't see this probably till a week and a half ago. And at the same time, they didn't know about if we were going to even have them on the board for this fall until July. So there's a few other dynamics too that made this even a little bit more difficult for us to decide.
Mr. Chair, I thought our reinstatement for Riverbend was closer to 26,000 on not 19,000. So why is this listed as 19 instead of 26?
The contract with Riverbend is 19.5, and then we have transportation costs of about 8,000. So we bus the kids out there, so that when you cut it, the savings was about 27.5. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
So
does.
we'd
Thank
still
you.
have the transportation costs on top of that.
How many students do we have that go out there?
We have, all our kids, K through 6, go anywhere from 2 to 3 times a year, or at least that's what it has been in the past.
So it's about 2,000?
If you figure it's about 275 kids per grade times 7, yep, close to that, maybe 1,800, 1,900.
2,000, so we're looking at cost per student of about $18.
You take the 37,000 and add another 8 for transportation, so you're up to 45,000 for the total cost of the kids going out there.
Except 6th grade walks. I don't know if they get bused. I know when,
Oh.
my son was in 6th grade, we walked to Riverbend. No, from 6th grade, from the middle school. So I believe the middle school doesn't bus, I think they walk. They go in the fall and in the spring. But it's still $8,000.
That's still $8,000.
Yes, but your number would be a little
Cost per
lower.
student would change a little bit, but
Yeah.
probably.
I'm
not
just
much.
thinking that 37,000 and figuring 2,000 kids, so.
But you have to add on the 8,000 for
For
busing.
transportation.
So you're up to 45 divided by 2,000.
Okay, so you're up to
$22.50.
$22, yeah, $22.50 per student to go out there, and they're out there anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 hours.
twice a year.
Sometimes 3. Some go twice, some go 3 times.
Oh,
Some
yeah,
go,
it's nor, they don't just go once, they go.
in the past, we've
Several
done that,
times.
yes, for the 19.5.
One of the things I noticed in the contract is they said they adjusted the cost to the charges to reflect their actual cost.
Right. We were getting a bargain at the 19.5
Yeah.
as, I don't
They
know
were
if we
treating
talked about
contract schools differently than non-contract, but apparently they weren't meeting their cost.
Yeah, I'm not sure if other schools got that discount. I don't know. What I was told when I came here 5 years ago is that we got a break because we were located in the same town as the nature center. So the thought was that if we expose our kids to it, you know, the local families would get memberships more likely than the Medford kids or the Waterville kids or some of those other families. But I understood that I think most other districts got charged the full rate. But I don't know that for a fact. You'd have to talk to Riverbend about that.
That was my understanding too, was that they gave just Faribault School.
Because we're located, co-located, basically.
Well, I just read that it says this year we're trying to bring our contract school fees in line with our non-contract school fees, which is so much an hour. And they're basing actual this reflects our actual cost for providing programming and is based off of last year's student numbers. So it sounds like they've looked at their cost and figured out what they need to charge per student and are charging the same now for all schools. And the advantage of being a contract school is you get priority scheduling.
That I don't know. I'm guessing you do because we set up our dates. I mean, they will hold our dates, I'm pretty sure, versus someone who might call in January and say, oh, do you have some time to we want to bring our kids out? They would certainly have all our dates for the year held for us.
Well, what does this mean for us if we spend that additional money?
Well, it means that we would have to take it out of fund balance, or, you know, you'd have to agree as a board to increase your expenditures by this amount, because what's in the budget is the 19.5 and the 8,000 for transportation.
So we're
That's why
reducing
we're-
our general fund?
Yes.
It's not
this comes
keeping
out of
us,
the-
it's not keeping us from spending money on something we've already budgeted?
No.
What impact would it have on our general fund balance?
It would be about a $20,000 hit, depending on how much it costs.
And that would take us down to, you know, just off the top
Well,
of your head, percentage-wise?
It's insignificant as
As
far
far
as
as
the
the
fund balance.
percentage?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's how I would phrase it. The amount of money in the budget of the school district is it's not a huge amount. Yeah, so
I think the bigger issue is,
point.
yeah, you know, you brought back some of the cuts, but not all of the cuts, and this certainly wasn't on anybody's ad list anywhere, so that was our concern. You need to think about that and think about the things that are still being cut and, you know, what's more important. We didn't want to make that decision for you, so.
Yeah, I'll say, you know, I can appreciate that the Riverbend Nature Center might have taken another look at its fees and it's the way it's been run. But I guess in 5 years on this board, I've never had to see a contract that doubled in 1 year. And you know, I'm really reluctant in this time in which we're asking many of our teachers to do without to do that, to accept that we got a letter from Riverbend Nature Center saying they needed to double our cost, and so we're going to. I just I think after the long relationship we've had with them, that doubling with this kind of short notice is just, I mean, I understand costs go up, I get that, but doubling strikes me is beyond what I'm comfortable.
And just to be sure that you have all the facts, Colleen Cardenuto and I did meet with the education director and the interim director to say just that. This is a lot for us to swallow right now. What else can we do? And they said that they would need a minimum contract of $25,000 in order to make it work for them. So what would happen by reducing this amount then is we'd have to cut some offerings, we'd have to eliminate some trips. they also said that there was a possibility that they could cover the busing so that we'd have that 8,000 to put towards the contract itself, but there were no guarantees on that, so that gets a little unpredictable. I'm not in favor of signing a contract if there's no guarantee that they can cover that busing. We'd have to have that in the contract in order to take the 8,000 and shove it over to the 19.5. At least then we'd be closer to what they would want, but, and wouldn't impact our bottom line, but they couldn't guarantee that they could pay for buses at this point.
Colleen Cardenuto has done some research with the staff to discuss the impact that it would have if you take Riverbend Nature Center away. You can certainly invite Colleen Cardenuto up to talk about the academic piece of it too, not just the financial.
Just to clarify, so if, when they said a minimum of 25,000, so if we don't do a contract, I think what you're trying to get at, Howard, is teachers would just plan trips, or staff or schools would plan trips throughout the year, but they wouldn't have scheduling priority?
Right.
So is that still an option if we don't do the minimum $25,000 contract that you're suggesting, or?
To do just an on-the-fly kind of trip?
Well, or, yeah, I mean,
Sure.
with some curriculum planning, but not
Yeah.
necessarily that you get
Locked
that
into
day.
a contract.
Right.
Yes, but then your days are gonna be probably a little more limited. Because if they do have contract schools, they're gonna schedule those dates, and those dates will be held for those schools. That would be the only downside to just,
You know, I'm not completely comfortable making a decision on this tonight. What I'd like to hear at a work session from our staff, the science teachers, I presume, that go out with these kids. Who is it that takes these kids out to the nature
it's
center?
primarily science, but I'll let Colleen address that, the other Colleen.
Well, I had the opportunity to call a few elementary teachers this evening. I did try to call the middle school, but couldn't get through to anybody. Talked to several teachers, they do really see value in this program, to be honest, that they feel that they can't do it the justice that Riverbend Nature Center can do. So that is really the statements that I have received. I did have a couple people obviously comment on, you know, given the choice between class size and the Riverbend Nature Center, they would obviously want you to fix class size first. However, many of them are really for keeping the program. But I also would probably prefer having that conversation at a work session where I can survey and have a conversation with more staff and probably bring some members in to speak to this. I just think calling them on the phone this evening was probably, you know, just kind of quick, and not really having the full conversation with them is probably not the best.
It'd be nice to get a little more thorough survey of where they feel, how important they feel this is. You know, I'm pulled towards supporting doing this for this reason. Riverbend Nature Center is part of the Faribault community, and I think they depend a great deal on local schools supporting it, especially the local school, the Faribault Public Schools. And if we don't participate, then that means they can't hire the kind of staff they need, and they can't offer as much. Other schools look at it, I'm afraid it reduces their programming, and they say not even Faribault is doing it. And I still think Riverbend Nature Center is a partnership for this community. It takes everybody in the community to support it. And we may have to forego hiring another teacher where we could reduce class size, which is probably equivalent to this, the way it sounds. Maybe not quite, but it's not quite equal to a full teacher. But on the other hand, you look at the benefits that we get from having Riverbend Nature Center in this community, not just for our school children, but for everybody in this community. It would be a terrible thing to lose it. And I think a lot of groundwork has been laid to have Riverbend Nature Center here, and it's a step backward for us not to support it. I can understand what they're doing when they need to recover cost, and maybe that hasn't been done in the past, but I think it would be I'd be a lot more comfortable making this decision if I could hear reaffirmation from our teachers that yes, this is a worthwhile program.
Chair, I couldn't articulate it better than you did, Howard. Great job, thank you. I guess if we were sitting here talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, then I would say probably need some more detailed discussion of it. But I agree, we've had a wonderful partnership with Riverbend Nature Center over the last 20 years or more. It is an extended classroom for our science program. I don't think we could replicate what they do at Riverbend Nature Center in our classrooms. I also think that we have to take a look at the fact that we probably have gotten a pretty good deal from Riverbend Nature Center over the last several years. And they're just finally saying, hey, you know, we cannot subsidize the public schools, whether it's Faribault or any other schools, in the future. That we really have to be realistic, as we do in our schools, about the cost of doing the business. And I think that the benefit that we're getting from Riverbend Nature Center for this increase far outweighs anything else. It's insignificant. It's not a large dollar amount. And I think for us to not honor that partnership would not be right in this community.
Our staff did feel that they could not replicate the lessons.
Pardon?
Our staff did say that they did not feel they could replicate the lessons, because that was one of the questions that I did ask. Again, I only have probably maybe 10 to 15 staff members that I had discussions with, and they were very brief, but it is one of the comments that have come out of the conversation. So.
Yes, Ms. Wilson?
Yeah, also mentioned that they're increasing the fees, but they're also decreasing our hours. So if you do the math, it's actually costing us more. Also, I believe this board did save the program. They were gonna cut it, and we brought it back. Is that correct? I believe.
Well, we
They
budgeted
did.
an amount that no longer meets this contract, so I think it would require another board approval
Right.
to, because we'd have to budget more to meet this contract.
But it was on the cut list, we brought it back, and then I'm looking at this, all of a sudden, you know, we brought it back, all of a sudden they're doubling fees. I mean,
They
this is
did-
gonna look odd to the public. We brought them back, we didn't have to, it wasn't on the priority list at all with that, priority committee. Then all of a sudden we brought it back, and now they're doubling. Actually, when you figure out the math with the decreased hours, actually it's over double.
Their plan or their intention was to add well, they're not really new, the 2010 science standards into their curriculum, and so they're rewriting curriculum based upon the new standards. So I know you spoke to the curriculum very vaguely. All that curriculum currently, at least when we talk to them, is not finalized. It's not totally written at this point. I think they may actually be waiting for us in some fashion on whether or not to complete that. But I'm not 100% sure on that.
Colleen, I don't know if you have an answer to this, but if we were to table this until after our work session to have further discussion, more information from staff, perhaps even some discussion with staff from Riverbend Nature Center, would that complicate their scheduling or the school scheduling? It's
They-
about a 30-day delay.
Yeah, I believe September 24th was gonna be one of our first field trips to go to
Okay.
nature,
So
to
we
the
should take
River Center.
action soon.
So, you know, when we talked to them, we talked about, you know, I told them that we wanted to touch base with our staff and let them know that the first week of school is probably not the best situation, and asked at least to go into the second or third week of September before giving them a 100% answer, just to see, you know, the feelings from our staff, which they said was fine. However, it is pushing that September 24th date. And so we would have to probably miss the first round of field trips. At least that, or try to move them back into October.
Could we review what the minimum, if we went with the minimum contract that they're offering, what do you foresee how that would affect? Would it just affect outings or trips, I imagine, the number? We went with the minimum contract they were offering at $25,000.
Yeah, I think we need staff input on that, because then it comes down to, okay, sixth grade, do you want one trip or two? Do you want it in the spring or the fall? Fifth grade, what do you want to do? Fourth grade, what do you want to do? I don't think either of us feel comfortable making that decision for the staff.
That was an option that was offered, is instead
Well,
of going
they
for
said
this
they would need at
minimum.
least 25,000, so it would still be an increase in the contract, so, yeah.
If we delay till the 23rd of September, our next board meeting, and they have to cancel the first round of field trips, can we still add it on in the spring of the year or sometime, and the same students have benefit?
the question that we had is to see if whether or not we could add it in October, and I think they were gonna kind of work with that. They do, however, I just wanna share something, Earth Day, I think Jefferson Earth Day is what they called it. Regardless of whether or not we do the contract, they would prefer not to do that field trip. And I wanna let you know that because I think it's been around for a very long time. And I just wanna make sure that, even if we do this contract, there's a strong possibility that Jefferson Earth Day will not occur. They felt that was probably very expensive for their staff. So that is definitely gonna be out.
I think one of the other things that they talked about is that a lot of the learning is done around the season. And so for the September session to be pushed off into late October or early November, they've missed the window of opportunity to look at leaves and whatever else is there at that time of year. It might be gone by November, so.
Did you look at the curriculum changes? I mean, will those work with our?
They really didn't have that to show to me at the time. They definitely have the standards. They know what standards they're gonna place in which curricular area. But like I said, they have not completed all the curriculum writing at this point.
So what they put in this letter that they sent to Todd about the second grade program would be fossils instead of seeds, that isn't necessarily what they're.
Right, she was gonna share with me basically the whole curriculum, and so she's got the general topics and the standards that would connect, but I just wanted to see a little bit more of it.
So yes, we can wait, or no, we can't?
But we can talk to, well, no, we can't. It's gonna be pretty tight, I'll be honest with you. They already
There's no
have us
good
booked for
answer.
September 24th, so it would be best to have an answer, however, I always prefer to talk to our staff before we, really fully make these decisions, but.
Well, on the agenda is a discussion and not an action item for this evening, so that can be changed.
Well, if we table it, it's almost the same as suggesting that we wouldn't want the full contract anyway, because we might not get the activities, those first couple activities in. Is that possible, if we did it that way?
I think that the difficulty is, we're kind of guessing at what they're gonna write as contract, and we can't tell Riverbend what the contract's going to be based on what we have. They could still keep it the same amount for less visits, based on the number of hours that's been reduced, as Richard said. So even if we did eliminate that first one, they could still be charging us $37,000 or more, depending on the hours, how that works.
Mr. Chair, I would introduce a motion to approve the revised contract with Riverbend Nature Center.
I would second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve a revised contract. Now, we don't have a contract at the time, so just trying to think of what the, so we'll approve the proposed dollar amount, is maybe what we'll do as opposed to.
The letter that they send usually operates as our contract.
Okay, all right, so we can approve that. Okay, great, so we'll let that motion.
Understood.
Okay, understood at this time. So we have a motion and a second here to decide if we want to approve this. Further questions or comments on this?
I don't believe you can do it, it's a discussion. We approved the agenda already.
There's nothing binding about the agenda. Agenda items can be added within the meeting. I'll go to my parliamentarian to make sure that we.
Within the subject matter.
Within the subject,
Yeah.
we can propose actions within the discussion that's there, so.
We're not adding a new item. I just see this as a valuable extension of our educational system.
And I'd add that if we're gonna err, I think it's good to err on the side of supporting the Riverbend Nature Center and on the side of offering our kids educational opportunities. And when I hear that our teachers are saying we can't replicate it, I think we're depriving our children of a great opportunity here. And so I'm gonna encourage the rest of the board members to support this.
My question would be, this is a one-year contract, a one-year agreement. My concern is a longer-term situation with, increased costs and unknown financing for all of our programming at this point. But if this is a one-year situation, that makes it more,
Yes, it's always been a one-year contract, so certainly we could review it a year from now again.
given the sense that we could pay for this by reducing our fund balance rather than eliminating programs. I guess I do not disagree at all. I agree with what Mr. Bodie and Mr. Robichaud were saying, but I do retain a concern that roughly $45,000, including the transportation costs, is maybe a small amount of our budget, but a significant puzzle piece that may need to be adjusted over the long term. But given where we are now, I think I can support the idea.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we're not talking about the full $48,000. We've already authorized 26, so we're looking at another $20,000.
Correct.
Right, no, I understand that, but if we were to not pursue any Riverbend activities, which I'm not suggesting, but if we were not, we would then be ultimately not spending roughly $45,000 that in theory could be spent in another way to support education.
Either way, I still would like to see us talk about it at the work session and get more information. And I suppose worst case scenario, if we change our mind, we can still rescind it.
I don't think you can once it's
Contract,
signed.
because it's a
Usually
contract.
When you approve it, I'm gonna sign it.
Okay, so we won't
Approve it
rescind it,
tonight,
you
no.
can't rescind it, let's,
No,
we're
if
clear
you
about
approve it
that.
tonight, then it's gonna happen,
Okay.
so. That's, okay, any further questions or comments?
So just to clarify the amount,
Mhm.
is this the amount, or this is an estimate of
This is different than what we've had in the past, because in the past, they've said the fee is $19,500. It didn't matter how many kids we sent out there or how many we didn't send. Now, there's estimating the contract to cost the $37,000 or 38, whatever it is, 333. But if you read that says, but the fee will be based on the actual number of students that attend. So if we have less or more, it will be more or less.
Was that estimate based on the number of students who went last year? Is
Yes,
that what you
I
said?
believe so.
We can presume it's an accurate estimate of what
Yes.
this year's are.
Yes.
I'm just gonna state, that I won't be voting for this, and it hurts me to do so. I very much want, us to have a contract with the Riverbend Nature Center. I very much want our kids to be able to go there, and I want them to be able to do it this year. But at the moment, given the situation we're in, I can't in good conscience approve a contract that's almost double what it was in the past. And I think that's too much to ask in a one time particularly with the short notice that the district has been given and the struggle we have to decide on it. So I very much respect the motion. I respect those who are gonna vote in favor of it. It is in no way a comment on the value that I think our district has for the Riverbend Nature Center over the last number of years. In this case, for my part, it's simply a comment on the dramatic change in this contract on a very short notice and my unwillingness to go down that road at this point. So,
Can I propose an amendment to the motion?
absolutely.
That we would enter into a contract with a maximum amount of $25,000, which is the minimum amount that they have proposed they could do a contract. But it's an increase, but not as high of an increase.
Is there a second? So there's a motion to amend this contract to limit it to $25,000. Is there a?
It's, well, what you're doing is striking out, what, 37,000, 333, and inserting 25,000.
Right, it would
That's the
mean,
mo-
it
that's
would
the
mean,
amendment.
it would mean reducing the number of times the students can go, in some fashion, so,
So how did we get to 25 instead of 19.5?
We've been told that 25 is the smallest contract they will do. That's where the 25
Okay,
number
so
comes
you're
from.
proposing we strike 37,333 and make it 25,000?
Okay, I have a question on that
Yeah,
then. Are
please.
you including the 8,000 for busing that's not included in the 37? So it would actually be 33 with your minimum
Right,
25?
Right, so the contract would increase by an estimated $6,000
Yep,
from the
yep.
previous.
Thank you. Second.
So there's a second for that motion for the amendment. So the item on the, item for action at this moment would be to amend the original motion to instead of proceed forward with a contract at the same service level proposed in the level, to reduce that service level, the number of hours such that the contract would be under $25,000. I just want to make sure that that was the intent of your motion. And what you seconded, and so that everyone understands. So that's the topic on the table right now, is that amendment to the motion. Carlene has something I think she would
Well,
Mm-hmm.
I
like to add
just,
at this time.
Colleen was asking me what the teachers thought of that, and I do have a few that said perhaps cut one or two visits, cut the winter visit, you know, so they, you know, they are willing to work within our means, if at all possible. So there is that component. So you will have some staff that will support that. Not all of them, but you will have some that will support that. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, I'd like to speak against the amendment, and because I don't think we're talking a huge amount in terms of our budget. We're going to invest part of our fund balance in education for our kids and opportunities that they will not have inside a classroom. We're getting them out of a classroom, out into nature. And I think that extra investment is good for the kids and good for the nature center.
I'd like to speak to that issue.
Yes,
I agree with you, Mr. Bodie, and I have been a supporter of environmental education and experiential education for a very long time. This district was faced with difficult financial decisions over the last almost a year. That's where the proposed cut of the Riverbend activity originally came from. It wasn't until just several months ago, when the state financing became somewhat clear, that we were able to go back to this issue. And you know, had we not been facing those financial considerations a year ago, or if that had been resolved at the last levy proposal, we probably would have had a contract in place, very possible, I don't know, but I'm guessing very possibly for somewhat close to the original 19.5. But there's no way of knowing that. I'm just saying that because we were in a position where we couldn't decide to act on this last spring, things have evolved somewhat at the Nature Center, and they've had to make decisions for themselves. So no one is to blame, it's just been the circumstances. But having gone through this financial roller coaster over the last year and facing additional twists and turns coming up in the next few months, I'm hesitant to overstep our original budgeting ideas by very much. So I guess what I'm doing is speaking in favor of the amendment.
Okay.
Mr. Olson.
Yeah, I got 3 points I'll bring up again. I don't know if legally we can do this vote, for one thing. And also, this was not brought before the Finance Committee at all. I thought these kind of matters should be through the Finance Committee, was not brought up. And also that we did save, I mentioned before, the program, and then they came back and did this to us. And we've set our budget. I don't know when they set their budget, but I think this is something, the discussion that should happen probably next year. And I agree with Howard that it should be in a work session, talk about it, but, you they're not bringing it to work session or finance, and all of a sudden, they wanna double their fees on us. So I'll be voting no.
Any further discussion? The item in front of us is the amendment to the original motion. The amendment is to approve a contract which limits the expense to $25,000 and will also reduce the amount of services that we receive. That's the amendment as it stands right now. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Bodie, Mr. Clerk, would you please do a roll call? Again, this is on the amendment, not on the original motion, so this is to amend the original motion from the contract as proposed in the letter from the Riverbend Nature Center to a new contract which would be limited to $25,000 with reduced services.
Strike out the words 37,333 and insert 25,000. Ready?
Go ahead, Mr. Clerk. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I vote no. Mr. Casper?
Aye.
Deb Davis?
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler?
Aye.
Richard Olson?
No.
Jerry Robichaud?
No.
And President Ingrid?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, it's 4 in favor and 3 against.
So the motion to revise the contract to limit it to $25,000 passes. And so now the motion in front of this board is whether or not we want to approve a contract with the Riverbend Nature Center for reduced services that would limit our expenses to $25,000. So now is the actual approval of such a contract. That's what's in front of us right now. Any discussion, further discussion on that item?
Clarify the motion now is amended to read $25,000 contract, not the 37 or whatever.
That's right, that's right. So the motion as amended now with the contract will be $25,000, which will reduce the services to our students. I'll maybe just take a moment to explain my votes here. I voted for the amendment. I'll be voting against this motion just for the reasons I stated before. I prefer this contract to the other one, but I still don't feel that this is a contract I can approve given the dramatic changes in the short notice. So those to explain my votes in brief.
Mr. Chair, let me ask a question. If we had 30 days to look at this, would that be another factor you would consider? Or is it the dollar amount or is it timeline?
It's a combination of the two, I think. I think to begin talking about, so I'm only speaking for myself here, but for me, I think I would have wanted a discussion a number of months ago, beginning to talk to the Riverbend Nature Center representatives to begin hearing more details about their viewpoint on it. Whether or not 30 days would be enough to change my mind, I don't know. So both are there now. Whether or not more time would sway me, I don't know.
I just have to say, I find it very concerning that we're sitting here talking in a multi-million-dollar budget about $20,000. That's going to impact kids in a positive way. I just find that very concerning as a board member.
Well, I will speak to the amendment I made. I find it's concerning that we can't offer this service to our kids, but I also know that we are talking about very tight budget issues right now. And if this is a one-year contract, that I would support the Riverbend Nature Center, I support the kids' involvement. But I also believe like those cuts were so painful, and what we could bring back, couldn't bring back was very tough for the community. And so I think I'm just trying to be responsible and add back a reasonable amount to a one-year contract. And if next year we're in a position where we can, bring it back to where it was previous to the cuts, then I would fully support that.
I agree with Ms. Marthaler.
Any further discussion at this time?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still very concerned why this wasn't brought to the finance committee. You know, I'd like to get an answer to that from our superintendent.
Well, like we said before, Riverbend didn't have this figured out because they didn't know what the school board was going to do until July. And then once they figured out that the school board did adopt it, then I'm assuming, I guess I can't put words in Riverbend's mouth, but they probably were drafting a contract, figuring out curriculum for the school, maybe even scrambling a little bit to get the curriculum because their standards aren't implemented yet. And then once they got to a comfortable state, then they figured out the cost, and then they presented it to us probably as quickly as they possibly could have, given the circumstances around it. So I wish they would have given it to us last March too, but I also wish that we would have had the finances to support it last March. Had we had that, we wouldn't be in the situation we are now.
Well, and it was just until, what, our last meeting that we were gonna spend anything with them, so.
Yeah.
They
And it-
didn't even think we were coming in.
No, and there's no, certainly we want to follow all the processes, and I support following that finance process, the policy process. But those, you get feedback from that. The board makes the ultimate decision. You get feedback from those processes, but it doesn't mean that every single decision has to go through those processes in order for you to vote on those different items. When there's an agenda item, whether it's action item or discussion item, you still have the opportunity to vote on those items. That's why quorums, when you have a quorum outside of the district, you can't make those decisions. When you have a board meeting, you may make those decisions because you have an established agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we table this until the September 23rd meeting, and that we have a discussion of this at our work session.
Okay, we have a motion to table. It requires a second. It's Mr. Clerk, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a non-debatable motion. isn't it?
Only as to time.
Only as to when it would
Yeah.
be. So there won't be any discussion on the motion to table. The motion to table this item requires a second. Is there a second for that
Second.
motion? We have a motion and a second to table this item to a future date. The future date is set as
September 23rd.
September 23rd, which is our next board business meeting. There's no discussion on this item, so Mr. Clerk, would you please do a roll call on this?
I'm gonna vote yes for this. Tom Casper?
I'm sorry,
No, that's okay.
I'm just, it's not appropriate to comment here, is it?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the nature of the motion.
And I vote no.
Deb Davis?
No.
Yvette Marthaler?
No.
Richard Olson?
Yes.
Jerry Robichaud?
No.
And Jason Engbret?
No.
Mr. Chairman, 2 in favor, 4 against.
I think
Except
it's 2 to
5
5,
against,
right?
5 against.
Two in favor, 5 against. So the motion to table this item fails, which means the item is still in front of us to approve the motion, and I'll restate the motion is to approve the contract with Riverbend Nature Center limited to $25,000, which will reduce the number of hours from the proposed contract. Any further discussion on this item?
I will just say that by deciding this now, even at a, recognizing that there will be some reductions in services, it gives our staff the maximum amount of time to plan, and allows us to move forward to the degree that our finances will allow. And I'm looking forward to further information at additional meetings, and have the hope that we will be able to restore our Riverbend experience to its full extent in the future when our financial situation is more clear.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
Mr. Chairman, I'll vote yes. Tom Casper,
Aye.
Deb Davis,
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler,
Aye.
Richard Olson,
No.
Jerry Robichaud,
No,
Chairman Ingrid.
No.
Mr. Chairman, it is 4 in favor and 3, excuse me, I'm in the wrong column here. It's 5 in favor and 2 against.
No,
Okay.
4 and 3.
I'm on the wrong column, yep.
Okay.
4 in
4 in favor, 3.
4 in favor and 3 against.
Is it-
I got you on the wrong column, that's why.
Okay.
I couldn't get my numbers to add up. Excuse me.
Okay.
4 in favor, 3 against.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Chair, make
The
a
motion
comment.
carries.
Sorry.
Mr. Robichaud, please.
My vote was not against the contract, my vote was against the dollar amount. I thought it should have been originally, that was my original motion, that it should be the dollar amount that Riverbend had indicated, so. And actually, the $25,000 is less than what we had authorized when we added back.
No, because we'll have to add transportation on top.
I understand that.
Okay. All right, thank you all. Difficult discussion, but I appreciate the openness and honesty of this board, and I thank you for working through that difficult item with us. Next on the agenda, other items of information, starting with student representative, and we don't have one here this evening. Do you know if there's a timeline for having a student representative?
Well, they're back in school, so I'll talk now to see
Perhaps
if we
at the
can,
next meeting.
get one that can
Great,
come to our
great.
September meeting.
Great. All right, any other items of information from school board members?
Mr. Chair,
Please,
I've
Mr.
talked to Todd a couple times already, and on our agenda, under number C, where we had a lot of, I think, 15 staff to resign very quickly, and I think that we should refer this to, you can fill in the blanks, the policy committee, where something like this does not happen quickly, that we're scrambling to find 15 staff people, in fact, one principal, but we had that filled, but, Todd, could you fill in the blanks, did you know the laws and the procedures?
Yeah, there is, legally, not a lot of things that we can do, but I think it may be worth at least going through policy to see if there are some guidelines that we can put out there for staff so they're knowledgeable about late resignations. It has been a very difficult August, I would say, probably one of the more difficult ones we've encountered, that I've encountered with all the resignations. I just think it would be, I just think it's a good idea for the policy committee to take a look at the potential of having a policy that would maybe hold staff here through at least the month of August, if not, I would say even July. But I think we should take a look at that and see what sort of options we have, and then have the policy committee come up with that, maybe a suggestion to the board.
So the idea would be something to the effect that the contract begins or is signed or agreed to at an earlier date than the beginning of the school year. Is that something to that effect?
I think I'm looking more for something to the effect that, and I don't know where this goes legally, but to say that the school board will not accept resignations after August 1st or something to that effect.
Right.
But I want the policy committee to take a look at to see whether or not it's something that they want to present to the board.
Okay.
So that's what I'm looking at.
And obviously we need, I don't know if there'd be any contract issues, but obviously we need to make sure whether or not there's any contract issues with you. Okay. Thank you. Any other items from board members?
I'd like to make a quick comment. Several weeks ago, I sent an email in the middle of the day. I happened to be working in the yard, listening to NPR, and heard an interview with an author that really impressed me. The author is a man by the name of Paul Tuff, who has recently published a book entitled How Children Succeed. And having been a lifelong educator and consumer of educational materials, I now have a new top 10 book in my experience. That interview is archived on the NPR website. I did indicate so in my email. I've taken the liberty of under the fair use doctrine of copying the preface to the book. And I'd like to share that with my fellow board members and encourage them to take a look at it. In terms of communicating with the board and with the community, my concerns that we do all that research indicates is important in providing quality education. I'd like to read the book jacket blurb here. Now, having been a librarian, please emphasize that the book blurbs are not always the most accurate, but having read this blurb and having read well over half the book, I am in agreement that this blurb is accurate. So let me just read this, and I beg your indulgence. Why do some children succeed while others fail? The story we usually tell about childhood and success is the one about intelligence. Success comes to those who score highest on tests, from preschool admissions to SATs. But in How Children Succeed, Paul Tough argues that the qualities that matter most have more to do with character, skills like perseverance, curiosity, conscientiousness, optimism, and self-control. How Children Succeed introduces us to a new generation of researchers and educators who, for the first time, are using the tools of science to peel back the mysteries of character. Through their stories and the stories of the children they are trying to help, Tough traces the links between childhood stress and life success. He uncovers the surprising ways in which parents do and do not prepare their children for adulthood. He provides us with new insights on how to improve the lives of children growing up in poverty. Early adversity, scientists have come to understand, not only affects the conditions of children's lives, it can also alter the physical development of their brains. But innovative thinkers around the country are now using this knowledge to help children overcome the constraints of poverty. With the right support, as Tufts' extraordinary reporting makes clear, children who grow up in the most painful circumstances can go on to achieve amazing things. This provocative and profoundly hopeful book has the potential to change how we raise our children, how we run our schools, and how we construct our social safety net. It will not only inspire and engage readers, but will also change our understanding of childhood itself. Back when I was becoming a teacher, learning to be a teacher back in the early 70s, I read a book by John Holt entitled How Children Fail. And it describes some of the shortcomings of school systems at that point. I like this approach of how students succeed even better, although Mr. Holt has been a guiding light in my own career. But I really recommend this book. I encourage my fellow board members to take a look at the preface, and if you have the interest and the time, the book I have found to be well worth an investment of my time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Casper. Other comments? Ms. Davis?
Just so everyone knows, on a happy note, volleyball game tomorrow night, band will be at, and football Friday.
School year is starting.
Yes, it
First
is.
games get underway.
With music.
With music.
Yes, has to be music, has to be.
And swimming won last Thursday in the first meet, and they have another meet this Thursday, so.
I have a
Soccer's
couple of
next.
items to comment on. I went to the MSBA summer session. It was on, the highlight of it was on school safety. Had some interesting reports, gained a better understanding of the levy situation. As you may recall, there was a good bit of confusion, and I got some insight onto how that confusion came about within the legislative process. I didn't learn any new information about what the effect is, but how that came about. A number of good presentations about school safety. I think in general, I didn't hear anything that wasn't in line with the best practices that we're already doing here in Faribault, which was wonderful to see and hear. But definitely there was some good food for thought on that important issue. So wanted to report on that. Next, this morning, the school staff was invited back. I know Richard was there, as was Howard, and got the chance to welcome back all of the district staff on behalf of the board. And so I'll just say it again here, the school year is underway, our teachers are back at work, getting ready for our students to show up, and it's an exciting time, and the next step is for the students to arrive, so we're excited for that. Lastly, before the meeting here, I handed out a couple of letters. The typed one was penned by myself, and I sent that as an email to the rest of you, and the other one was handwritten by Mr. Casper. He and I apparently had similar ideas of having letters of support for the levy to the editor of the Faribault Daily News. I handed out for you to look at. Personally, I think it would be nice, and so I would ask for my letter. I think it would be very nice if those of us on the board who are supportive of the levy all signed a letter to show that support as one group. And I haven't had a chance to read Mr. Casper's later. Perhaps we could do the same with his letter at a later time, or I can incorporate some parts of his letter into my letter. So if you are willing to do that, if you would let me know so that no names go on it that weren't explicitly given permission by me, that would be excellent. And that is all I have for this evening. Any other items of information?
I know you haven't read Tom's letter yet. Just his last sentence would be great if you could put that on yours.
I'll take a look at the last sentence and see if I can incorporate it. Thank you.
And I would suggest that there might be some advantage in keeping this issue in front of our community, possibly publishing both letters, not simultaneously,
Right.
but over
Spaced
some
out.
period of time. And I would solicit anyone who, any board member that finds my thoughts agreeable to also sign that. I'm perfectly happy to make whatever grammatical changes. I've suggested a couple in my draft, but as you see, it was a handwritten draft, so but this would, I would not change the substance in any way. There might be a couple of very minor punctuation or wording changes when I get a chance to look at it even more closely. But that's what my thought would be, to possibly publish both letters over some period of time, whatever the Daily News would agree to.
And I think that's a good plan for us to keep that message of support for the levy from those of us on the board out there in front of the public. I think is a good thing. Any other items of information? Superintendent has a report.
Just underneath my report, there's an attachment, so I would encourage you to take a look at that sometime. That kind of summarizes our year last year. There are certainly other things that may have been included in there, but I tried to summarize all the good things that occurred as a result of our great staff here at Faribault Public Schools and some of the good work the school board has done for us. So a lot of good things happened last year. It's a good part of it. It also helps if you're thinking about doing the evaluation. I know I emailed both Tom and Jason to start thinking about it, and I thought having an evaluation for your superintendent around October almost makes a little bit more sense than waiting till the spring, because especially next year when there's new elections, it could be a whole new group of folks, and it'd be nice to have the same group of folks doing the evaluation before January 1st. So something to think about in the near future is to do my evaluation. The other things, as Jason said, it was a nice program this morning, and your board chair did very well, spoke very eloquently, and thank you, Jason. We also had a nice speaker today that tied a lot of humor into the message that he was putting of how teachers inspire students, so it was very nice and well received. I've attended a C legislative meeting, so we're getting to the point where we're going to start drafting some of our legislative agenda items for this spring. We are going to be ready in case there is some extra revenue with the revenue report that's coming down. It might be positive, and it's always possible that districts could receive some revenue, but it's a long shot. This is mainly a bonding session, so the likelihood of that happening is pretty slim. So we're concentrating more on policy and more on bonding this time around with our Schools for Equity and Education group. We sent 3 staff members to Kenosha, Wisconsin, to along with chamber members and business folks and South Central College folks. We sent a rep from the middle school, one from the high school, and a representative from community ed and our adult basic ed program. And they came back and they had a very good experience, and we're really building a relationship with South Central College very strongly. Dr. Parker, the new president of South Central College, has done a nice job transitioning and also proposing some of these really exciting new programs and collaborating with the high school. Interviewed with KDHL, it's on at 9:20 at, I guess, 9 o'clock on KDHL 9:20 last Wednesday, so that was always good. And our special education meetings with Cheryl Hall and Chris Richardson, the superintendent at Northfield. We get together once a month to make sure that this transition goes smoothly. Next time around, we're going to bring some data so that we can both look at what Northfield's doing, what Faribault's doing in terms of caseloads for each different disability, and see what sort of loads each of the staff have, and do a little comparison with each of the districts. So otherwise, it's gone very well. It's been a good start.
All right. Last item on our agenda before we adjourn, item 12, dates to remember. September 3rd is the first day of school. September 9th at 3:30 p.m. is the curriculum committee meeting at the district office. September 9th at 5:30 is the work session at the district office. September 16th at 7:30 in the morning is the finance meeting at the district office. September 23rd at 6:30 p.m. is a regular board meeting right back here at City Hall, Council of Chambers. And lastly, September 30th, 2013 at 3:30 p.m. is a curriculum committee meeting. Wait, we don't have two, do we? I think the second one is a mistake.
Well, that is correct, because there isn't one in October. It's how the.
Oh, it is correct, so never mind, I take it back, it's not a mistake. September 30th will be the second September curriculum committee meeting,
Actually, the October.
which is the October meeting, meeting in September. Thank you, Kathy.
October
At
something.
3:30 p.m. in the district office.
Midnight.
I'm sure a huge crowd will come now that we clarify. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve adjourning the meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion